Good morning, hello, and happy. Is it Friday finally? It is finally Friday. Happy Friday. Sylvie, I heard him make a really weird noise, so I'm gonna go check on him really quickly. I'll be right back. Well, apparently he saw something that freaked him out slightly. So, but he's here. He's purring and ready to go explore again. Maybe. Okay, so yesterday I was able to get everything deployed out. What ended up happening and the cause for things to not work was one of the it was the stylist one of the stylist package, I think it was stylist actually, has a crate that it was using that didn't work. So didn't work. Didn't compile. Basically, when it was in the not just Docker, but I think people were saying that it was happening there too. Anywhere where it was sort of like a Linux like environment that had a specific uh, linker that was not working correctly. And it turns out it was something weird like a specific JS value that's in a macro was attempting to be compiled. But of course, it's JavaScript and that can be compiled by a C compiler. And so it was causing all sorts of fun issues. Of course, it was working locally and it wasn't working in GitHub Actions. And what I found out was that I was using 1.69 still. I hadn't switched over to 1.70. So I tried that in GitHub Actions, and bam, that worked. So that is not a fun. That's not a fun thing. So it doesn't sound like there's going to be an emergency fix from the compiler because it doesn't sound like that's the problem at all. It sounds like the problem is with the library. So we have to wait until that's fixed before I get new compiler goodies. It's also very interesting that this is something that's in the new version of the language. So I'm not exactly sure if it needs to also have a fix there or if something else is going on. But anyways, that's basically with yesterday's thing. As far as I can tell, all the stuff that we need like technically is up. Now we get to start planning again the course that we might want to make because we're not really sure what I'm gonna do. And so here I am with freehand. I was planning on using this or some kind of whiteboard something to plan things out. And it's been a long time since I've opened up freehand, and there's a lot of templates now. What I'm thinking about is some kind of not necessarily flow chart, potentially a mind map that could work. I want to basically place a lot of technologies, and then have lines between them to show like how they connect to each other. Like for example, we want let's say we want to talk about um, front end frameworks and technologies, and so therefore we have maybe like U and well, even we can like mix React together, and so like U is connected to Rust, React is connected to JavaScript, but then they're both like have they're both like creating something that runs in a JavaScript context, and they're both in like the front end container, like something. So that might be good to have in there. There apparently are a lot of things. So pick for me. I barely did anything on here, so I don't know how they could. That's probably like the AI type thing. Okay, so let's see. AI enabled. I don't think we. Wait, will they actually do AI stuff? There's this brainstorm thing. Here, let's preview it. Use freehand AI to automatically create tasks from your ideas. Go from idea to action in no time. Okay, so that's interesting. But I don't think that's necessarily what we want. I don't think any of these are really what I want. Probably not meeting organization type stuff. Strategy and planning, maybe. Yeah, but not really that either. Not really a task things. Ideate. So could be a flowchart. Could be a brainstorm. One of those maybe. The mind map might be the best one we have so far. All right, let's go with mind map. All right, so far, oh, that's nice. So we have all sorts of objects we can have on the right. Yeah, they've done a lot of changes to this. So normally, they don't have like a dark mode for this. We're using Dark Reader, and therefore my toolbar on the bottom is completely impossible to see. That's fun. But okay, so what I no, what I want to be able to do with this is share different technologies. So the other day on Discord, I asked what people wanted to potentially learn. And let me see if I could find it. And then I'll have to go back and look through some of the comments that I've had in YouTube. There's been a few here and there for like different texts. Okay, so the first one the other day that was bare bones authentication. So not sure I'll do like main topic. Could try that. So if I were to do main topic, this would be um interesting. This could be like I could do bare bone, so like auth here, and then everything is sort of connected into this. That could be interesting. So then this would be more for planning out like a full lesson. I think maybe more of what I would like is to pull you out. Wait, can I? Yeah, pull you out. We could do. This would be basic auth, and then we have the small ones around it. So auth then has like jots. We have I guess like basic based. This is really more of jots versus cookies. Oh, I was hoping to make the there, that's better. Okay, we have basic auth, we have jots versus cookies. We have something like auth 0. Let's see, basic auth, jots for cookies, auth 0. We have the various hashing libraries in case we use those, but that would be, I guess, under basic. So there might be like more sub things under here. Let's see, what else? Like when to roll your own. And so if we start with this off like here, this is just surrounding this. What are you? Are you a canvas? Can I even tell? I think that's a canvas. Oh, okay. So that's not a frame. It's just a box then. Okay. Okay. So shape. I can partial fill with, I guess, gray like that. Okay, so this will be like one of the potential topics, right? Now, if I were to do auth, uh, I think that what I would end up doing is bring in a go find like a security person who has done auth before. Maybe like actually part of this is like an interview with a security person to like really find out their answers to all of these, and then take those and turn that into the course. Okay, another one was Diaxis. So there's Diaxis. Obviously, for front end type stuff, there's U. Wait, is Diaxis front end or back end? I don't remember. There's Leptos. I think it's front end. Obviously, React. Angular. I think it's Angular.js is the secondary one. I don't actually know if it matters anymore. It's been so long. And then what's the Angular, React, Vue, and each of them have their own little things for it. Category wise, there are the different languages too, and that feels like a sort of like a frame type thing where we would potentially have like, okay, start up here, we have some like Rust, like JavaScript. I am the best at these two languages. I mean, obviously there's then TypeScript, which is very close and similar. And so if I start here like those together, now what's interesting is that this would, something like auth would start out Icarus Rises. Hello. How are you doing today? It's kind of outside of all this, isn't it? It's like there's almost like we have this idea of like just technology. And all of this, so well, I guess like, yeah, even Auth0 is like not technology based. Like this is all, doesn't matter what technology. This is something a little bit farther out. Like it almost like I need more multiple dimensions to a tech map, right? It's like this is pure technology, whereas this is ideas that can be applied with technology. You're studying electrical engineering and computer engineering. You're doing your thesis this period. What's your thesis on? And is it, so you're doing electrical and computer engineering? Is that like two different majors that you're working on, or is it like that's the one like major is electrical and computer? I've known people who got electrical engineering, and it seems like a fun area of study. Okay, so it's a combined bachelor's and master's. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Okay, so it's this thing that you have in your country. Okay, yeah, here it would be a lot of extra work to do that. And you'd have to have a university that supports masters. Because not all of them do, or at least a master's for the thing that you want. It's almost like this goes. It's almost like we have language then as its own thing. My thesis is on detection of algorithmically generated domain names with deep learning. Oh, interesting. Oh, so try to determine whether or not that sounds that sounds interesting. Plus, also you can use deep learning for it, which is almost like creating an algorithm to detect an algorithm. Which I wonder how like there's the entire like sort of Red Queen idea of the Alice in Wonderland. This is a security like topic, which is as Alice is running away from the Red Queen, the path starts moving with her. So it's almost like she's on a treadmill. So as she moves, she doesn't make any distance away from her attackers, but they don't make any uh, distance to she. They don't get any closer to her too. So it's like, okay, I could see like an algorithm like that. Okay, yeah, it works, but now they update their algorithms to make it even harder to detect. And so like everybody needs to keep on improving, but nobody gets anywhere because they're just always improving at the same rate. It's like it's so weird that we get into these states where it's like there's one group of people that don't want that happen, so they constantly uh fight against it. It has application in the field of computer security. That is because malware uses those algorithms to generate hundreds of domains in order to avoid static blocking. Oh yeah, I could see that. I could also see that as in not just domains, but like create like module names. Like if you go to create.rs, if you go to npm, there's a lot of people that create names that they want to be similar but not exactly to other ones, so that if you mistype them as a developer, you'll end up installing malware on in your computer and in your project. And so it's not just domain names, that could also be like, okay, automatically generating crate names that sound good but also are like not real. Yeah, there's so much that they could help with. Okay, so we have basically topics like this. We have languages over here. We have part of languages. We have these. So Deoxys would be down here. You. Um, and then we have like TypeScript under Angular. You get down here. React. It's under this. Vue under. It's interesting because with TypeScript you can do both with either of these. So they're really there together. I would probably want to turn. Can I turn this into something else after the fact? I don't think I can. Okay, so we have that. What else do we have? Okay, so auth integration, CQRS. Ah, yes. Okay, so that's part of auth. So then one of these. Hey, no. CQRS. So that is something to stop a cross-site forgery. So it's very security type stuff. Really important. Okay, so security headers. So CSRF. Yeah. Then we have more. So CSRF. XXS, iframe, CSP. So then maybe this would be security headers. Example Docker deployment. Um, okay, so deploying. So then Docker itself is its own entire thing. So that would probably be another one of these big ones. So we have Docker. And then, so we have like the deploy, like I guess we have like the dev environment. We have production. So Docker and dev, Docker and production. Interesting, this mixes together well with AWS or with any of the cloud service providers. So we can use some, like with AWS, you might use something like ECS as opposed to EC2. So like running your containers. Kubernetes doesn't need Docker anymore, but I think you can use Docker with them. I don't use Kubernetes myself, so I'm not terribly good at teaching that. Docker, okay, and then there's scaling, like specifically scaling Docker. What is that? Oh, that's Docker Compose. I guess Docker Compose isn't scaling. Docker Swarm is scaling, but I don't know anybody who uses that anymore. If you need something like that, you usually just use Kubernetes. And this would be like an introduction to Docker type thing. Ooh, session authentication with a Redis database. So, uh, that's an interesting one. So, uh-oh. Hey, no. Talking about Docker. Docker on my desktop where my OBS is running decided it wanted to do an update right now and then crashed. So that was fun. Okay, so session auth with a Redis database. So there's this auth, and then inside of it, there's this idea of like. So I guess there's these different topics. So like, it's almost like you have to treat this like a fractal, where you have super high level stuff like this, where you have like language type things. So really, like these are together. But then like when you go in, you have web development, uh, inside of like web development, you even have like authentication type stuff. Authentication type stuff actually doesn't need web development, right? Because it's more of like networking. So it's almost like what I really want to do is have different shapes inside of here. Have something like we'll have like languages for like how to do a specific thing in a language. So there might be something like that. So I can group you. Why can't I group you? Oh, I can't. So we have languages. We have then specific topics that would go inside the languages. So like diving in. So looking at something like Rust. Oh, I have to like ungroup you. Then I can add you in again. So we have Rust. So there's all that, and then that almost doesn't kind of matters, kind of doesn't matter. We have then framework, then we have like web tech and frameworks, and then we have these other ideas. And so under Docker would be like a DevOps type thing. So we have languages itself, we have DevOps, and that almost then ends up looking like sort of like this keeps on going out like that. Where if I were to say, I don't know, this weird world of programming, which I'm not sure that's the right way to think about it, but like that we have, okay, it's gonna get really weird, right? Because we have, I guess it's gonna be like uh, languages. Then down here we have things like um, oh, probably security. And then that's where like a subtopic would be for like web auth. I'm not sure if I would be different. Like that might be just auth. It's like authentication. We have DevOps. Actually, it's not really. So like DevOps is more of a culture than a specific thing. So it would really just be ops at this point. And then I could have an entire different thing all about management and leadership and culture in a group environment, which would then bring you to DevOps. Maybe rather than programming something like software development, I like that. There are ML ops in the field of machine learning. Not surprising. Like ops would then be part of all of that. Also, Akago, hello. Because like ops, like what is ops really? Like operations is really all about um, resources for the people doing stuff and resources for the things in in production and everywhere between. So DevOps is really a culture that allows an organization to basically integrate this all throughout the company as opposed to having just a single team that does it. Ironically, a lot of companies have embraced DevOps and then they just create an ops team or they turned their ops team into a DevOps, like they named it DevOps and then they didn't change anything. And so they I would argue that they don't do DevOps, they do ops. Um, just wandered in from the category, was looking for a reasonable distraction while you work. Well, I do a lot of talking, so I hope that's okay. Um, but besides that, awesome to have you here and welcome. I'm exploring different technologies. Then once I sort of end up with like I guess and with that, I'll probably move on to some testing type stuff and testing an app that I've been making. So in here we have Docker, uh, and interesting enough, like under ops, we would also have like cloud would be under here because like that's where you do stuff. Like all the cloud stuff is under ops. And then looks like we're going. I was saying like circle. I have no idea why. What's the why is certain shapes? Is there like a reason for shapes in mind maps? Okay, so then we'd have something like Rust, JavaScript, TypeScript. I should use a capital S. So we have that. We have security. We have web. Then we're going to have front end, back end. Probably can barely read that, can you? I should zoom in. Ops has cloud, and so Docker, this is going to get interesting here. So if I bring this out, we're going to have something like, I don't know if I want to go like specifically at AWS, but I kind of have to also, because they're different enough that you can't just, I don't know, it gets weird. Oh, that's totally fine. It's kind of what your ADHD addled brain needs, really. Okay, well, then glad to have you here. You're thinking cloud in your head as infrastructure as a service or something like that. Well, and that's what DevOps ends up supposed to be, right? Like, if you do have any individuals that are like 100% working on ops type stuff, what they should be working on is stuff that allows anybody who's working in any of these other areas to still do their work in here. They just don't necessarily need to have the tech for it, right? So like they could write, I don't know, what are the different let's see, we have cloud, like we have AWS, like in here potentially would be another layer, which would be infrastructure as code. How can I make that dotted like everybody else? Line caps. Okay, so start. So those are all just circles and other stuff. Oh, there we go. Weight and style. Oh, and I don't want an arrow. Okay, that's pretty cool. And it can change your color and make you whatever you want. Select that we have infrastructure as code, but then interestingly enough, infrastructure as a code can help you, but like you can do AWS without it. So in this case, we get our first really fun thing here. So you get a link like this, and you also link to this. Because yeah. Now, I probably want to come over here and, well, see, like, it's gonna get. This is where like creating any map starts to get in a really weird place. So let's say we have something like, I would have a split between service providers and the types of cloud. Um. Oh, you mean so like we have cloud and then AWS. Since you have like infrastructure as a service, SaaS, PaaS, and AWS, yeah, Google Azure provide all three. The problem is that like then AWS like is everything. So if I want to do like a specific technology like ECS, and then also we have EC2 too, because that everybody recognizes that one. So infrastructure as code controls AWS. This is only going to control these. SaaS, PaaS, infrastructure. So software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. I think so. The problem is it sort of starts breaking down after software as a service. Uh, just because like so many things end up being both software and platform, or it's like a weird combination of the both. Cloud types, infrastructure has passed, then cloud common providers. So, um, what I'm what I'm hoping this mind map is going to help me do is it's really two things. I want this to be to help show and plan courses in teaching things. So like let's say um if I want to teach a web development course, then I'm going to say like okay, well, in web development, we need to draw a box around certain things. And it gets like with it looking like this, it gets really weird. I think what it actually needs to be in a like a real world environment would be a 3D where I have like web as a layer, security as a layer, ops as a layer, and then a box goes across all of the layers. This is sort of like a flattened out version of that, which is not not that great. But if I do, so it can't be a shape. It has to be like a pen. Let's do, what color have we not used? Kind of used everything. There's no white color. I'll use, I guess I'll just use this blue. And so let's say I want to do like a front end course where I say, okay, we're going to grab that and maybe we'll grab JavaScript. You need some auth. You need, like, we're going to deploy this. So we're going to not use infrastructure as code, but we're going to deploy this to EC2. We're going to use a little bit of Docker for development and like testing type stuff, and something like that. It gets, like, as you can see, it gets really nasty here. But if I somehow manage to make it a little bit better, like, I don't know exactly what the design would be in order to like make the box nice looking. I guess like if you have, well, and this is where I think I had need levels of abstraction, right? And that's where Icarus was talking about. Is like I need basically say like Rust is giant, JavaScript is giant. There's tons of things inside of there, and so it's like okay, well I want just front end. Well, this course is gonna be front end. Well, what does that even mean? Like there's so many frameworks. Like does that mean I'm teaching you every framework in existence? No, of course not. So it's almost like this is going into too much in depth here at this level of abstraction. And then I can zoom in on AWS to get to all of these things. So that's what I was meaning by early on. I think I need um, to treat this as a fractal. So if I have software development, we have languages, um, we have like web ideas, like so. Is web right, or would it be more of this is like the context of where your code runs? Domains. This is like almost domains. But that's too vague. That's too vague because I will look at that later and not remember what the heck is going on. So this is maybe like environment, like where we go. And so if I have something like, okay, we do, let's just say we're only going to this layer. Like we only go to this layer next down. So that's going to be, we have front end, we have back end, we have like um, IoT, things like that. As a former teacher and a current app dever, a mind map like this would have been nice. So, where did you teach? I used to. I was a I taught in a code school as an in classroom teacher for 3 years, and I learned a lot about teaching at that time. It was a lot of fun, a lot of interesting. Okay, just a small community college. So I didn't. I was in private, which was there's good and bad things about that. I am convinced that if I joined another private company, I would end up probably being fired because I have too many opinions on teaching now, and most private companies want to tell you what to do. You're still a student. What? Wait, you mentioned that, right? Yeah, you're going for your master's and everything else. Icarus, do you want the secret to learning, like the most best way to learn and guarantee that you have it in your brain? Of course you want. So the secret to learning is to teach. There's who was it? It was it's Doug Lemov, I believe, who said this. I could be wrong. But so like I have this book here, Teach Like a Champion, and in one of the suggestions in here is that if you have a lecture, you have one person learning and like n number of people just sort of being entertained, which is a really sad thing when you think about it, but like it's so true. Like a lesson doesn't necessarily mean um, that a lot of people are learning. It's usually the person doing the teaching that learns the most, which is so ironic. So flip it around. As the student, become a teacher. It's more or less what is happening in your university. Nice. You're working on your PhD when admin in school finally allows you to work on your dissertation. Oh yeah, if you're working and you're doing education type, like learning type stuff, that's tough. It's just like so many things to focus on. Okay, so environment is if I want to add like a comment almost, this is like where the code runs. Nothing taught you more about programming than teaching it to others. It's an absolute like magic secret. And as a teacher, it's so it's so hard to convince students to do that because they think that they should be taught when in reality you should just ensure that they learn. Now, when I say front end, what I probably mean here is browser and server and like IoT. So examples of this. But oh, client, not browser, I would say. Ooh, yeah, that's good. It's like we have client, we have our server, we have like IoT. Now, IoT is a client, but it's also like a very specific environment, or it's not really specific. Like there's different types of IoT too, but like the considerations for each of these are vastly different, and the what tools you pull out in order to work with any of these are very different. So like if I start diving into this, then we have like the virtual machines that this runs in. So like the client, and this is something that I tried to like convince a lot of people of. I don't know how well I'm doing it. A browser is a virtual machine. Think of it as like similar to the Java VM. And the entire point of it is that it runs on any device pretty much that you want. Even IoT devices can often run browser technology. And so you can write your client code in a VM that runs anywhere. And that's the real like reason why JavaScript and TypeScript is so popular, is because they can run anywhere. You finished all your core classes with mostly A's and a few B's, but your school lost their SARA auth, which allowed them to distance teach in all states without individual state permission. In Maryland, where you live, won't play. Oh, so I've never worked. So like the company I worked with that did education, we didn't get what is it called? We had looked into but didn't get the certification or whatever it was for like we are education with a hard E because of that. Like the rules for it are so hard, and like I will teach. I will not become a certified or whatever it's called teaching like school. That's insane. The rules and regulations around it. Oh, you program. So you'd basically have to move or like go and finish it if you wanted to like finish it. That sucks. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so ops we have Docker, we have like cloud. So would on site be another environment where your operations? It's like more of automation. It's like now dev type stuff and ops have a lot of overlap. And in this case, this might be more of like sysadmin type stuff. So administration almost. Because like ops people hate me for saying this, but um under like a certain level, that's kind of what you're doing. You're in service to everyone else who's doing that, right? Those ideas confuse you as well. So the idea with ops, like the entire point of ops at one point in time was to make it so that the people who are like writing the code, like creating a product over here, don't it's not necessarily don't need to worry about. It's more it was actually a lack of well, it doesn't start with a lack of trust. It ends with a it like turns into a lack of trust pretty quickly though. Because you start saying, I don't trust the people that write code for like a browser or even a server to spin up a new virtual machine that their code runs in. So therefore, I I'm going to hire or I'm going to do this. I'm going to spin that up for them, and so they have to send a request to me to do that, and that's where ops sort of ends up being, and that's why DevOps sort of pushes that to like, oh, I need a VM. Okay, I will spin it up myself. Oh, look at my list. We also have database type stuff. Um, okay, so we have security. So we have authentication. Um, there's there's other parts of security too. A big one would be, I mean, there's security. Security, like the problem with security as its own thing over here is that it needs to be just like ops embedded with everything. because there's security considerations that are unique if you're running in a browser environment, if you're running in a server environment. There's also security considerations that are not unique at all. They're just, that's just what they are. So let's see. If we look at you, I mean, yeah, because like that's another thing is like it's just like system security maybe. Like there's system security and there's like um networking security. I don't know if I'm not going to teach most like I say that. Probably not going to teach networking security. Confidentiality and integrity, availability. It's like yeah, there's so there's authorization and then there's uh what so there's permission systems, so authorization and I forgot the two names for it. Oh yeah, that's what it is. Authentication and authorization. That's what this is short for. So um auth would then be both, right? So like if I do authentication, authorization, which then goes into like a role-based system and everything else, and this gets us into architecture. Confidentiality, integrity, availability, authentication, authorization, and accountability. So we have system, which this is very closely tied to here, and the main reason why people don't want just normal developers working with like an instance. Authentication is prove who you say you are. Authorization is more like, okay, you as somebody who is authenticated has permission to access this resource. Yes, definitely. There's definitely a difference. Another way that I like to say it is you can get into the building, but can you get into the room? Are you allowed to like get into the room? So it breaks down again here. So I'm not sure. Let's see. So there's authorization. So we have the auth based stuff. This is also where like the web, so like maybe like networking. Not necessarily networking. It's more of it would be more of recognizing what and why certain things need to be private and how it goes. Like again, security is a culture. I think that's something that a lot of organizations don't really realize is that it has to be a culture. You can't just hire a security person and bam, everything's secure. Because then eventually, guess what happens? Everybody hates the security person if there's not a culture about it. Everybody hates the ops person if there's not a culture about it. Yeah, it's a good idea because like then because like if I do that, like so this can be taught as its own, like that's independent of a language. Like I can teach like the ideas of this. Um, what other ideas of security can I teach? I don't have any books for security down here. So I can't look at them. Yeah, there's see besides that, there's also like secret type stuff, like I guess it's almost like I want the idea of like to teach the balance. So this would be balancing availability and uh guarding and like shielding. Um I know there's a name for that, but I don't remember what it is. All of these things have like really good, clever names. I don't have the books down here, unfortunately. And let's see, is there anything else? Okay, so like balancing also has would like this would include things like where you can use like where do you put your secrets? Like, do those go in a database and then get encrypted, and then encrypted at rest, or encrypted all the time? Do you put them in environment variables? But how do you store them? Especially if you use infrastructure as a code, where do those go? Sort of like um, understanding. So I guess like the balance is one thing, but like just understanding the threats. So like it's almost like why security? Like I guess this would be what it is like just uh not threat analysis, but it's more like understanding the understanding the dilemma of security. So I think I spelled that right? Maybe I did. Okay. So let's see. Databases. So often under administration, that's where we get database type stuff. So we can put this out here. So we have databases. It's more of just data would be where I put this. How do I do it like what this did? Where it's like all in oh, I do it like that. Okay, that works. Now data goes into things like relational databases versus non-relational databases, a many to many, see, and then there's things like ORM or not ORM. Then within ORM there is the actual ORM. Then we have microservice with Axum, yeah. Oh, microservices. So microservices are interesting because it's really not. It's again, it's a philosophy really. So I've come to this sort of belief that microservices are really just also still monolithic applications, but they're broken out into different running environments. But it's like the same. The people that are talking about microservices and saying like microservices are worse, and then the people that talk about monoliths and the monoliths are worse, they end up arguing the things that like are like there end up being the same problems across them all. Like if you were in a monolith system and you're having to do heavy multi-threading applications, you end up needing a lot of the sort of like things that are happening that you need in microservices. And it's a very sort of like weird environment where like the terms are different and some of the technology implement at the highest level is different, but the general idea is the same. Like in in a monolithic environment, you want to be able to deploy. You want to be able to, like, when you recompile, only recompile specific parts of the monolith. But that's exactly the same as the idea of a microservice where you can just deploy one part of it and it doesn't change anything else. And so if you write your monolith in the style a of a microservice, you get the same thing, which I think is really fun and interesting to think about. So I feel like this is like a very um like a very high level, and I don't know if I want to go any deeper on this side. But I could let's see. I could go like create a new one. So this is like maybe just general ideas, right? Then there's like actual technologies. Let's see what that would look like if I try to do something like that. So let's say I did a shape. Let's make this a circle. I want to put in here, we do something like, I do a lot of Rust on this channel, right? So let's do, let's start again as, um, I guess what we can do is we can start with like a map. Um, Instead of a mind map, it could be a map. So let's say we want to start. Oh, right. Okay, so if we're starting from like nothing, right? You basically, let's just say like um let's imagine we're starting from nothing. I won't fill out everything in the map, but I want to find out where in the middle we're going to be teaching on. Psychological acceptability is the best term you can find for it at the moment, which is the concept that security should be designed to maximize usage, adoption, and automatic application, while also um, making it so that way it can't be turned. Like, it's basically availability. It's like maximizing availability to the end user and the developer at the same time, right? And you want it available for somebody to use, but the balance comes into, if I make it, let's say I make this app uh not need a password. Well, it's now available to everybody that has an internet connection. Like, anybody at all can now use it. It's super available. But then somebody is going to come in and uh, delete somebody else's stuff because I had no passwords and no authentication. And suddenly the availability actually dropped to negative because they're no longer available to the stuff they had. So actually, it wasn't available. Like that the security person is supposed to like find out where the availability actually is and find like the right spot. So like, okay, you have availability to this, but it has to stop at this one because even though you think it's more available, it's actually less available if everybody else has access to that too. Security versus security versus usability otherwise, which is the section you found that term under. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Security versus, I like that. Security versus usability is a good one. Is it? Yeah, it's usability like that. Let's say we start with we want to learn programming. Like, I don't know, I have to have programming. I have to have some place to start from. Is this helping you study? Nice. I'm glad I could help. I don't understand why freehand doesn't let me use white. Oh, that is white. Oh, dark reader is making white look black. That's funny. Oh, okay. So I want opacity. Oh, this is the opacity for it. And I want, let's say, oh, okay. I could do something like that. It's making you pull out terms and use them in a more practical and real world setting, which is helps a lot with retention. Oh, that's absolutely true. Like that goes right back to the teaching, right? Like you have to in order to use it in a real world, you have to like it's very similar to teaching. It's a brain hack. Okay, so if I were to start a map like this, let's say like we want to learn programming as the end goal, and down here we'd have you have like what's an oversimplified way of describing somebody who literally can do anything in the programming world? It's like you know everything. You are you are programmer. You are like I guess it would be like full in my case this okay, so this has to come down. Like the way I can define this is I have to look at my values and what what types of things I expect to teach, and then I can find students from this, uh, which hopefully includes some of you all would be interested in this. So let's see. This would be more of like I want full stack, uh, like full stack developers, and then I'm overloading the term developer and stack by a significant amount. So my my thoughts on this would be stack includes like ops, security, the engineering itself, all the different languages, cloud stuff. Twisted Seed, hello. How are you doing today? And then developers also include like so many different things in this context. But okay. So if we're starting out, let's choose another shape. Not bad. That's good to hear. Okay, so when we're starting out, we have to choose. Um, there's specific things that we don't really know, right? Like, it's like there's the big picture ideas. So like there's things about programming which are shared across all languages. So there's like flow, so things like the if statements, like every language that I'm aware of has some ability to logic choose one path or another to go down. There's everything has it's like maybe I mean we could start with Rust because like that's what I'm probably going to focus on to begin with, and then I can obviously update if I really want to. So if I start out with this, get away from teaching syntax. A lot of courses focus too much on teaching one particular language. Yeah, yeah. I don't the the entire point of teaching for this would probably be more of uh and this is one of the reasons why I built the LMS the way I want to build it is if someone else has already taught that specific thing, my LMS will say go do that. Like here's like 5 YouTube videos that teach you the syntax of like an if statement. Go do one of them and then come back to me. Something like that. So that's what like I'm really interested in is more of like, okay, I have a student, I'm going to ensure that you learn as much as possible. Like we're gonna do that, but it's not necessarily like all my stuff. And there's gonna be some times where it's probably gonna be me creating that because there's a lot of terrible material out there. So what I do is ask what subjects can you write in a flowchart or pseudocode form. Yeah, I know. It's like if I start with web dev, it's like let's say we want to learn. Okay, so we want to learn, and a lot of the questions that we had was like web dev type stuff. Let's learn web development. So we want to learn web development. We're going to do that in Rust, and so then we have like okay, so we have back end or front end, right? So this would be the language. Like we have language, so I might want to do multiple of here just to show there's different ones. So we have Java, script, and then ironically out here we'd have TypeScript, but it would just sort of end. Then we have backend versus front end. So let me. What types do I have? I have another type here. Oh, that's weird. Nope, nope. We have backend. So this would be that server. We have server, client. Sits here like that. Which book did you teach? I didn't really, when I was teaching, I never had a book that I taught from. These are more of, so these are like, this is specific. So I guess actually like the way I would do this, it wouldn't be like this, right? It would be, because if these are languages and I don't even have that, so that's fine. What other language? I can't even see what these are. What are you? That's just a line. That's not helpful. A diamond could be interesting. Diamond is usually like an if statement or something. Oh, I could do like it could be a flowchart. Oh, that could be interesting. So we could do this as an actual flowchart for like decision trees. For like, okay, so decide the language first. So we go down there. I don't know. More things to think about. What are you? You're our. Oh, that's not too bad. I like that. Oh, it's Programming Logic and Design, 9th edition through Cengage. I did not read that book ever, but I think I vaguely remember something that looks that like had that name. Zilby, hi. Hi. Want to come and say hi? No? Just one head scratch and you're off? It actually doesn't use any particular language. You didn't like the order of some sections, but you like that fact. So there's a there's a an interesting problem that we have in education, that we start with theory and then we go to specifics. And this is actually something that Doug Lemov talks about in his book here, and then some other books too, like Practice Perfect, I think, is in there, and then there's another one that he came out with that also has it too, which is that theory first doesn't really work as well as a lot of places think that it does. Um, Theory should come second, probably. It's like practical first, theory second, advanced third, something like that. Because like you don't have context to get the theory, so it's almost like I need to teach doing it, and then I can teach the theory of like the logic and like the not the not doing it. But like if somebody is learning web development, they've never done web development for it first, I can't do codeless because they won't understand it. So it's almost like I have to do something with code and then I can go into codeless. It's like so weird the way that needs to be done. But okay, so if I have Rust, then we have our back end and front end. Okay, so we have I guess let's say I did. It's almost like, or come here with like languages. So you're gonna be off here. You're gonna be down here. I guess it kind of makes sense to do like language. So we can say language. And then you'll be sort of like off surrounding here. Then we'll have our front end versus back end. So we'll have client. So really, this is going to be like essentially the browser client. And so I want here to include, I wonder if I should just repeat these. So like your type is now like the context of where to run on. Oh, the context, environment. That's what we had decided. And so then we have things like this, where you have, let's see, environment Rust. So, okay, so the environment will be, we have the browser, we have server. Those are the things I'm carried about right now. And let's say we have, now one of the things we were talking about is like auth type stuff. So auth type stuff would go across both of these, right? So if I have these out here, and it's like also, you know what? It's also domains. So it's really not any of these things either. It's domains. It's like, let's say, okay, learn web development. The so let's do like learn web development. Let's name this like uh, domains for web dev. Akago, am I getting you with the word domains? It's a very specific one for education type stuff. Oh, and I have another book, but it's upstairs. Understanding by Design, which is a really like this deep dive theory into domains and like how to teach for understanding, which is so different than what normally happens. And it's like very interesting, the history of like how we got to where we're going. But we don't necessarily do any of that stuff. So I don't necessarily have this. So like domains. Domains are, is it domains? Wait, it's not domains. It's standards. That's what it is. Standards. That's what probably will trigger you. Okay, so standards for web dev. And so this is where we get into like specific technologies. So like a standard is, what is something you can do? Like what is a testable thing that you can do? You always thought that focusing on logic first, then syntax is better, not necessarily theory first. Just find a way to cut out having to be exact in the wording of the language first. That's why I say flowcharts and pseudocode are a good first step. Yes, like I agree that it would be good. There's a psychological problem though that I've run into when I tried that, which is buy-in. The problem is that you can't get something on the screen really quickly if you don't use any kind of code. And if somebody's paying you for education, they really want to like see some kind of like something going on. So what we found out is that we need to purchase we need to like purchase attention for like that logic, purchase attention for like all that other stuff, by giving them something that like they get immediate feedback on, from like the computer. So like, okay, let's open up the browser and let's like write like your HTML and have like an H1 tag that like shows up. And that unfortunately is like language specific. You have to go into some language to be able to do that. But then we can now talk about logic a little bit. It's a fun, weird little phenomenon. And that's less about like education. Like education would be better if I could just do that. But uh then somebody would just walk out because they don't think they're being taught. Okay, so standards. I am not great at creating standards, but like okay, so if I want web development, like things that you can actually do. So we can uh we can create, so like use HTML. And so like I don't necessarily need to create them in the full language of standards. So I can do something like HTML. Like HTML in a browser, right? We have things like styling. So style a website. It's a super hard balance to find. And like this would be like a static web page. It's like I want to style a web page. So style HTML. And so if I do this as a standard, then there's tech that we can choose for this. And so this would be then my, not circle. I can do like a square, a rectangle for this. And so like, okay, static web page, we need HTML. If I don't even have like style like that, I want a static web page that includes styling. So this would be CSS. And then going off of here, CSS is going to have something like um, flex, grid, things like that. So now I can start, this is how I can sort of mix that. Okay, so far I'm not unhappy with it. We have HTML. Okay, so like other things to create a static web page. we want to serve, so like deploy. See anything else that we want? Like what are the things that we can do? So like it's like a static web page, CSS, HTML. Like I don't even have JavaScript as part of this. This would be just basic web tech. Oh, debugging. So debug static web page. Or would it be like use? I think it would be like debug CSS almost. Like debug CSS, debug HTML, debug static website, or debug debug browser, debug code running in the browser. It's like this then gets us to something like the DevTools. Now the idea is that each of these could be its own like a lesson, right? So DevTools would then have like potentially a lesson on how to use like the HTML part of it, how to like debug. I mean, maybe not. Like maybe this would just be the lesson we're here, and like HTML might just be its own lesson like that. But CSS has stuff underneath it that are a little bit more complex. So therefore, you need more. You need stuff in there. Like deployment is interesting. So like for a static deployment, so that would be here. So static web page. Then here, what are deployment options? Like Vercel. I used to do Heroku, but they turned off their free tier, so I'm not going to use them, for teaching. Vercel. What else? What else exists that's like free? That's simple, like Firebase. That they still exist, right? Um, for static web page, I would probably not use. I would probably not use Shuttle RS. That would be something else. Like if I wanted to go to there, I would say, okay, not a static web page. Maybe I want a. Can Shuttle do front end stuff, or is it really just servers? Like I want to deploy like an API. So deploy an API. This would be like Shuttle. .rs. And another one here for an API. I mean, I could do Heroku, but I think Shuttle has a free tier. Heroku does not. If I was gonna say like, hey, just pay for it anyways, you might as well just do something like here, DigitalOcean. You can just say like that. That maybe goes into like another one of these, which is like a VPS. So let's line this up a little bit. XAMPP is a good web server suite, depending upon what you're meaning by deployment. Yes, like deployment would be your code is no longer running on your own computer. And I think the way I always described it when I was teaching to students was, I want you to be able to go to your family, like your friends and family, and send them a link, and they could open it up on their own computer or on their own phone or something like that and see what you're doing. Because like normally people, especially when learning, run it only on their own computers. And like that's what we do. Like you develop on your own computer, and that's fine. But as soon as you want somebody else to look at it, those are no longer fine. Now, deploy is actually going to be off of here. So like I want to deploy your static website like this. And of course, then if we're going to do that, we have over here, we have a not so static website, right? We have a, what is it? What is it called? I don't want to call it like a dynamic website. We can go into like old school, like DHTML. We're gonna do that. That was like what 2000 2009 2010 terminology. Interactive. Oh, you know what? Okay, I think this is an opinion. We have the difference between a web page and a web app. And so yeah, we have like build a web page. So here's another thing that this allows me to see here. In order for me to trust that a student knows how to build a web page, I need them to successfully do CSS and HTML. In order to know that they can do CSS, I need them to know that's one of these two. They could do both, but minimum one, right? So like they need grid or flex. So it's almost like I would want to do like a different shape for that, right? So like choose one, grid or flex, or both. That's okay too. And then I will say, okay, CSS. So like I would obviously add some like other styling in here too. There's some things in here as well. Um, and then okay, you know how to build a web page. That's great. Debug code and running browser. You need DevTools. Deploy. Choose one of these. Like you want one of you two, and you're fine. And then that's it. Like this would be like potentially this would be level one. I think I need a lot more sort of thinking about like what the standards are. So I probably actually need to sit down and like come up with standards, right? But if I were to do a shape here and I draw a box around you that's not yellow. Oh, no. Don't use a box at all. I use a frame. What? No, that's not a frame. Oh, that is a frame. Can I make you not white? I can't. Okay. Can I give you oh, I can give you a title, kind of. You can't really see it. So this would be like fundamentals, like whatever level 1 is, right? So this would be a unit. So this would be a unit. Unit 1 would be like build and deploy a static web page. Like if you could do that, you're good to go here. And you need to learn these 3 standards. But once you do that, we can move on to web apps. And so this like if I do this map, this helps me in designing the courses that I create, because I would create like, okay, a course on CSS, a course on HTML, a course on DevTools. And then slowly this helps me build out which things I want to build. Because like over time, I do want somebody to be able to come in here and learn. I want to know how to build a web application. I want to know how to build like an advanced web application and build that. So I kind of like this. Now, let's do, this is going to be a standard. I just like sometimes decide it doesn't care about the alignment. Okay, so we have the standard. This is going to be a topic with, so topic that, I guess it's just a topic. Here, this is going to be like a lesson in a topic. So a topic that requires 1 or more lessons. I'm not super thrilled with that word for this. You, I don't want to use, I want to do something other than, no, not that one. Not align. Diamonds could be good. This is 1 or more. So 1 of. Okay. If I read this right to left, we can say we have a standard. A standard is made up of topics. A topic is made up of lessons. This is a required lesson. And then this one is, and then let's not do lesson. Let's do like, this is a specific skill. And this is choose 1 of specific skill. And so in this case, I can go back to green again. So I actually want these to be different colors, right? So we start, you're that color. You are, let's say, actually you could be the green. You are gonna be, you could be yellow. And so then I don't need that at all. So like this is then, the entire thing to learn would be the path through everything. So it's more of, okay, so let's imagine that, let's go through the list. So somebody said they wanted to learn authentication. Let's see, what else do we have? We have the CQRS, so that's security type stuff. Oh, Docker deployment could be interesting. Session auth with Redis, relational database, CRM, microservices with Axum. I don't think I have. Oh, and then there was some request for like game development type stuff with Rust. If I look at, let's see, the Docker one is interesting. So let's say I come down here. We'll grab another frame, or I'll just start over with this one. Well, no, I want to keep this as an example. New frame. Okay, so let's do so like a Docker deployment. That's sort of like a DevOpsy type skills. Let's do like DevOps. So like let's say I wanted to teach or somebody wanted to learn. I want to learn DevOps for web dev or something like that, for web development. So looking at this, what are then the standards for that, right? So the standards are we need to spin up like run run a web app in Docker. So like we have, I guess we just have local Docker development. I have deployed Docker. What else do we have? So local Docker development, deployed Docker development. We have like potentially the clouds that they go on, but that would be the deployed Docker, right? So maybe it would just be this. Topics for that. So we have just like Docker itself, right? So that might be just a straight up required skill. So running Docker locally. So you need to be able to do that. So then the next thing would be really interesting. I would probably do something like so this is maybe like just introduction to Docker. So like Docker fundamentals. It's like Docker fundamentals, like the very basics of it. But then we want like running um like the entire front end infrastructure all inside of Docker, which I'm not sure like a clever, easy way to put that. It's like maybe like local, Dockerizing a web app, Dockerizing a full stack web app. It claims that Dockerizing is not a real world word. It's a real word. Don't worry about that. And so I'm not sure that there would be those. We would probably something like say, okay, we now need like Docker networks. It's like Docker networks. We need volumes. I totally lost these things, didn't I? Oops. This was required skill. Choose one of that required skill. Almost like I want this to maybe be a different color. Then I can use those two. Oh, I can use blues. So I can use required skill maybe is that blue, and then the optional skill is that blue. You are the topic. You are the standard. So required skill, choose one of these skills. And then there's one more. So you have diamond. Here, this one could be good. And let's do, this one would be optional skill. I'll do that color. Cowboy Bebop, hello. Am I designing a course for my LMS? Kind of. It's less of designing and more of figuring out what the first course is going to be, and then I can design it. But like that kind of is part of designing too. So it's like super early levels of that. Because initially my thought was to do like a full uh, U course, but sort of looking through what the what the market is right now, that's not necessarily what a lot of like what most people want. And so I don't necessarily think that's the best idea. I think what I want to choose is like something really small, uh, something to get going with that actually is popular. So it could be like maybe a part of Axum, or it could be full Axum, or it could be like something else like that. And so I want to like for this, I'm sort of coming up like, well, okay, there was a question for like a request for Docker deployment. It's like, okay, well let's do like let's plan that out, and because that should be a fairly simple plan, and then I can use this as a pattern for everything else in the future. Let's do a different color for that, so then you can be that dark blue. Can I make the text? Can I control the text? I can't control the text color. Oh, I can control the text color. There we go. Okay, so Docker networks, Docker volumes. Um, I would see networks volumes. What else was in Docker that sort of was like sort of like debugging? It's almost like I wonder if I would put like a would I make this like Docker compose might be an optional thing. Like it's a good idea, but that doesn't mean like you don't have to have it to Dockerize the full web stack. It just makes it a lot easier, in my opinion. But if you can do it without it, it's not like that will really hurt. Okay, so Docker fundamentals. So networks volumes compose. And if you have them in a network together, you have images. So like we have images, which means we need, which is really creating images. So creating images, that stuff, and then the way this would work is we'd have a line to there, and then a line to here. Okay, so now I can move these all around and they'll auto switch where they come from, which gets a little bit interesting. Interesting, like right around there, it doesn't realize that it's like covering something else up, but okay. So if I were to do something like that, then that's like that gets us going, right? Like local Docker development, um, then deployed Docker. So in deployed Docker, we would have like potentially two topics. We have VPS, it's like deploying to a VPS and deploying to maybe something like I might choose something like AWS ECS as like two topics here for that. And for the VPS, that is not necessarily all that hard or different. Um, might want to use something like a Docker Compose file in this case, but it's not like still not necessary because if I vaguely remember, there's another scripting system that you can use for Docker in production. Well, and also that's the other thing is like it depends upon what our like resources are. Like if your database is in your database is usually not in Docker. Like I don't know anybody who actually runs a production database in Docker. So that's one thing is what not to put in Docker in production. This would be just on its own. So don't put your database in Docker. I mean, that being said, I've done it, but like, know why, and realize that you're breaking the rules when you do it. Or at least it's not breaking the rules. Realize the danger you're putting your stuff in. I think that's what it is. It's like it's dangerous. And then okay, so we have the VPS. So then you are the VPS would then be okay. We want to set up something like DigitalOcean for this. And then okay, so we have one of these, right? So we do DigitalOcean or AWS EC2. So choose one of these. But then regardless of which one it is, it doesn't really matter because they're both kind of the same. In the end, they're just VPSs, right? So, like there'll be like a thing for setting those specific ones up and how to spin them up and not pay an infinite amount of money. But in the end, it'll be configure VPS. Like, okay, we'll have to um, so after you spin it up, we'll like harden the VPS, hardening the server. So that might be another actually standard, wouldn't it? So it'd be like set up a VPS. So you go down here. So hardening the server. You actually are that. Hardening the server comes into here. Now, interesting, ECS would then be not necessarily a topic. I mean, maybe it is. Like we come here is like deploy Docker is like you have these two choices. So like this one, need more room. Why can't I? Okay. Put you way over there. So we still have this. We have, okay, we're going to something that specifically just does Docker containers and something that just does whatever the heck you want. And then you have to set up Docker containers or Docker Compose or something else like that. This one would be set up the VPS, but like once you've hardened the server, we've used DigitalOcean or AWS or AWS EC2. We've hardened the server, but we haven't like necessarily set up Docker on it. So then in here we'd have requirements for install Docker. Once we've installed Docker, we like then like which images to run. So we have what not to put in Docker there. So like basically run images. Auto run images. So auto run containers. And we probably want some kind of maybe like an optional thing then would be scaling, which for VPS sucks. So scaling the VPS. That actually might be over here. And that's actually going to be different for each one, isn't it? Yeah, I might stay away from scaling then. It's just like adds in way too much complexity and like maybe throws off. It's like that's really a different like course altogether, is like managing this. Like you need this just to make sure you have it set up, but this is like literally the bare bones for getting something set up so you don't harden it, so you don't get hacked immediately. And then just like install Docker, auto run the containers. So that way, if you have to restart the VPS or like it crashes, it auto restarts them for you. We probably want some kind of like logging system to like see that. So we want monitoring. But this isn't about the software itself, so it's not going to be monitoring the software, but monitoring the VPS inside, essentially. And then ECS would be, we've already created the images, we've already done that. So like, I mean, this would essentially just be one of these. Oh, wait, you know what? If I leave that as that, then we just do ECS. It's like use ECS and then also like scaling ECS. Let's see, we have scaling ECS, ECS, and then there's gonna be what is it called? There's there's the image, there's the images repository ECR, ECR, Elastic Container Registry, and you need all of these. We need to put an image in the ECR. I mean, you don't have to, but you don't have to. But most people, if you're going to be using like your own stuff for this, you're in a company and you want to secure it. So that's an optional one, isn't it? So ECR is optional. We have ECS, and then we have to scale it. I would want to spend a lot more time making sure that I come up with uh, the right standards here. So I might want to not exactly sure the best way for me to like come up with the full list of standards. I I think part of it is like thinking about projects. Like let's say if I start with the end in mind, if somebody were to pay me for a course on how to do Docker deployment, like deploying to Docker, and then they went out to a meetup and they said, "Hey, I took I took this random person's course on the internet on deploying to production with Docker. It's really awesome. I love it." And then somebody else comes up and says, "Oh, really? So what did you learn? Did you learn like X?" And then with X being a standard. And then of course the person says, "Yes." And then they ask, "Well, okay, well, you learned that. Did you learn this?" And they keep on asking those questions until eventually either I missed it, and which is bad, or it's just them being an asshole, and it's just like that's not like, did you learn Kubernetes? And they're like, no, it wasn't a course on like how to set up a Kubernetes cluster. It was a set up a Docker cluster. Also, he told us Docker isn't even like Kubernetes drop Docker. So come on, shut up. You're just being a jerk. It's like it's a balance. So this is the important part, because once I have these become easy and clear of what I need to do. So they might say like, "Hey, okay, here's an interesting thing. Okay, you learned how to deploy Docker. Where did you learn to Docker to?" "Well, we learned how to deploy to a VPS, and they gave us some choices. I chose to do DigitalOcean. So I have a Docker thing running in DigitalOcean." It's like, okay, that's interesting. Did you learn any other cloud things? Oh yeah, I learned how to deploy it to AWS ECS. It's like, okay, well, did you learn how to do it to Google Cloud? It's like, well, no, I didn't. But with AWS ECS and with the VPS, I am, you know, it's confident that we can do Google Cloud. Like, it's easier than ECS. It's easier than anything else. So therefore, I have no problem. I can figure that out now. So that's like the boundary of like where to like stop creating lessons. And then this would be interesting because like this would be, it's not necessarily a course, right? Like it could be like this would be a course, I guess. But more interesting than that would be now this could be one of these things that we had up here. So I could now draw a line from here to like say, okay, now that you now that you learned basics of whatever that thing was, now you can learn this over here. So that is, I mean, we could do Docker. Like I've actually created a Docker course before. I don't think nobody on Twitch or YouTube has ever referenced the course that I found. So I don't think any of you actually ever took that course. I think one person reached out to me on LinkedIn after finding it. But it was, what's the company that it was with? It was with a sysadmin test, like a certification prep company that has like a Pluralsight style courses. And so I did an introduction to Docker for sysadmins on that. And so I could do something very similar. Like this is not, this would not be that bad. And then I could also focus it on like, let's do a course only on this standard. And then that way it would just, I would just let's see, let's draw the line. Let's imagine that I did that. This would be something that you should reasonably be able to learn in a weekend, like in a very short period of time. Like I create lessons on it, uh, and it would be a very, like, this would be cheap. So this is what I want to do. I'm not necessarily going to do this one, but I could, and I need to figure out, like, what I want to do is figure out a bunch of different standards across the stacks that I want to do, and then choose one of them. That will be the first course. It'll be a live course where it will be, you sign up. There'll be some stuff that we do. There'll be some. I hope to have like a cohort style where it'll be like 3 to 5 people, so you could all work together, and then you have access to it forevermore. And then I can chop these lessons up and like basically sell it afterwards on its own. And then we'll go bigger and bigger and bigger over time. So this entire planning thing took a lot longer than I thought. I thought I was only going to do this for like 20 minutes and then sort of like have get to this point. I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. I'll have to come back to it later off stream. I think at this point now, I'm gonna have to come back to this off stream, and then once I'm back on stream again with planning stuff, I'll have I'll have a good idea of what exactly we're going to teach, and go from there. So future streams, I'll be back on Monday at around, I think we're going to keep up the same schedule. So I think around 6 a.m. Mountain Time till around 8:45. Today I have to take off a little bit early, so I can't stay until 8:45 because I have a work meeting and then I have a doctor's appointment, and I have to sort of get ready for both of those. So I can't stay the entire time. But we're going longer than normal these days, which is great. So as I mentioned, I will be back on Monday morning to work on this. I am no longer doing the weekend streams because I'm doing longer weekday streams. So that gives me a little bit more time to sort of focus on this and think about this and go bike ride and other things, other fun stuff. Plus, there's like farmers markets around because it's summertime. So with that, thank you everybody for hanging out with me today. Good luck with the rest of your work, Akago, and then also Icarus. You were working on your schooling stuff, so good luck with that too. And so everybody else, thank you for hanging out, and I will see you all next time. Bye.